have one more extract of one of the short stories we'd love you to hear, because it is probably, for some people, it may be the favorite of the whole book. I know somebody in this room who absolutely adores this story. Michele Hutchison is originally from Solihull, but she has lived in Amsterdam for a very long time, has a Dutch husband and two Dutch English children, I suppose. And she's just published her own book, too, which is about bringing up children. What's the title?
The Happiest Kids in the World.
The Happiest Kids in the World. And it's been incredibly well reviewed. I think it's knocked the Norwegians off their pedestal of being...
Let's hope so.
Anyway, no, it sounds fantastic. Now, you're going to read a short story called Olive. Tell us a little bit, very quickly, about the author and why...
The author's called Helga Rubsamen. She's from the Dutch East Indies, and she was born, I think, in 1934. Actually, she died in December.
Gosh.
So it's good to read this out tonight in memory of her.
This anthology is... very poignant anthology. So, Michele, if you be you can read from the beginning of the story, yes?
Yeah, it's called Olive. Olive and I moved into our last shabby attic room because we'd been kicked out of all the nice lodgings. We were old but high-spirited, and we liked to tipple. To be honest, we no longer cared where we spent the winter. We'd gone from the bottom to the top and taken a fast train back down again. We'd seen it all. We'd misbehaved in Marlow Park, and we'd been called hussies on the banks of the Seacon Canal. We'd lived like fine ladies on Count Lukey's lute until he breathed his last breath. We'd sailed Holland's inland waterways and the seven seas in the seaworthy barge of retired Rear Admiral Hendricks with a CKX. And we'd sold chips on a stall at VUC Den Haag's football grounds, sleeping under the counter, all three of us, including Pimmy the dog. In short, we weren't that fussy anymore. Apart from saying that if there was a drink for the taking, we'd be there, gossip said that Olive and I were an item. Maybe that was the case sometimes, but we had a lot of other stuff on our minds. For example, how, at our age, old but still too far from our pensions, we could get hold of some cash. We drew benefits, of course, picking up 80 guilders from the Beerser Bank every Monday morning, but that was a basic allowance, and we couldn't live in the manner we were accustomed to on it. We did a few cash-in-hand jobs now and again, but as few as possible, because there was little satisfying work of that type to be had. And we scraped together 10 guilders here and 25 there, which still added up, even though it was peanuts compared to the free pickings of the past. We didn't complain about it. Our needs had diminished too. It was no longer important to dress up, to primp and preem. In my case, it was no longer worth it. It had never been much use anyway, as far as I was concerned. Olive had deliberately stopped dolling herself up. Otherwise, I'm sure she could have put on a good show. Better than a lot of those young things, slender and chic as she was. But she'd had enough, she said. All of her previous earnings, which were not insignificant, had blown away like ashes in the breeze. So why would she go to more trouble than she needed to? Olive could have been rich and well married, to an aristocrat if necessary, if she hadn't been too kind for that, and too indifferent. Her motto had always been, it's all swings and roundabouts. By this, she meant that if, for example, she had married Count Lukey, she'd probably have been harassed to death by his relatives by now. And if she had looked after her money better, she'd have had a house, but no happy memories. Only all the worries that came with ownership. That was the way Olive thought about things, and so did I, naturally. The people who called Olive a harlot were wrong. She was simply open to any suggestions, and if it happened to pay, she wouldn't say no. Rather than whorish, she was just curious, more than anyone I'll ever meet, alas. Where money was concerned, she always put her personal pleasure first and never did anything out of pure calculation. The way I got to know her was proof of that 30 years ago. I was going through a tough patch and was sitting in my attic room one miserable Sunday afternoon, complete with drizzle and pasty faces outside, struggling to keep body and soul together. On that Sunday afternoon, there was a half a tin of sardines that I was going to share with the cat, and not a drop to drink, apart from tap water. Little by little, it still turned 5 o'clock, and I was lying stretched out on my bed, periodically going over to my record player to play my one record by Big Bill Brunsey. And then I'd pace around and roll my 47th ciggy and wonder why the hell I'd bothered to get dressed. The cat was sitting by the window counting raindrops, as happy as Larry, and I envied her. And I decided that she could keep all the kittens she was carrying, so that I'd be surrounded by beauty and insouciance and je m'en foutisme. Then my downstairs neighbour, a tomboyish girl who worked in an acrobatic group that performed in nightclubs, came upstairs and said, Tell me, if you got the pip or something, you're pacing backwards and forwards, and that's the 16th time in the last hour you put that darkie on. Isn't there anything else you want to do? Nothing with her, I thought. Do you fancy a beer? She asked. She was actually quite sweet, but back then I was still jealous of those kind of girls who spoke so frankly and didn't seem bothered by anything. Come with me to Olive's, she said. These days she even has a good spread on Sundays. I wanted to put on my one smart skirt instead of my corduroy trousers. But the girl said, you needn't bother for Olive. Just come along quickly, because once our gentleman arrives, we'll have to leave.
Perch on here. But the great thing is, Michele, like Herman, was here for the very first High Impact, so 4 years ago as well. Gosh, we haven't changed a bit, have we? No. Michele actually translated that story and another story in the anthology as well. Yep. And I forgot to mention, of course, that your story was translated by David Colner, yep, who is another of the great translators, and you're certainly a wonderful group. Now, we unfortunately have to end it here. If you liked us, hashtag High Impact All Stars, Twitter at EuroLitNet. I'm glad you like that as well. But I do want to thank everybody who came here tonight. It's been a fantastic evening. We've got some books still to sell, to be signed, if you'd all be so kind. And then just chat for a little bit. So thank you so much to Friedeline again. Thank you to Herman Koch, Sam Garrett, Esther Gerritsen, David Nichols, Michele Hutchison, Jonathan Gibbs, and Joost de Vries. Thank you, everyone, very much indeed. Thank you.